Before Angry Birds existed, Rovio was a very small company in Finland who was consistently working on games without making a profit. Their small team became an even smaller one over time, with a whopping 12 employees by 2009. On the edge of bankruptcy, one of their ideas felt a bit more special than the rest, and they would spend the next 6 months working on the game that would change their lives forever. This is the story of Angry Birds. This is a new series diving into each individual game in the Angry Birds series, discussing its history, gameplay, characters, updates, and more, before adding it to one massive tier list by the end. I know I've made a list of all the games in the past, but that list sucks quite frankly. I barely gave each game an appropriate spotlight, considering I based my rankings off of memory and stole most of my clips from Zach Scott's videos, and I just generally didn't know what I was doing. So now these games are going to be properly covered, and yes, that does mean games like Angry Birds Epic are going to get their own dang video. I cannot wait to get to those. But first we have to start with the game that built the franchise, the original Angry Birds. Oh, also I want to get the series going, so next week we'll be doing seasons 2, but enough intro. As I was saying before, Rovio worked on the game we know as Angry Birds for about half a year. It was a small team and they had other projects going on simultaneously. But over this time they turned a few upset looking chicks into full-blown Angry Birds. How? Well, they realized what made Angry Birds so angry. Their eggs had been stolen. A lot of sites love to say that the pigs were green because the swine flu outbreak was in the news a lot during the development of the game, but it seems as though that was probably more of a coincidence than anything. The game needed an enemy, and the lead designer Jaakko Isalo just assumed it needed to be an animal, and the result was pig-like. The main bird was red, so the complementary color was, of course, green. So no, it wasn't swine flu, people. Get that through your thick skulls. Sorry, got a little angry there. These birds are really rubbing off on me. Anyways, the next big issue was the gameplay. There originally was no slingshot. The birds just sort of jumped at the structures. Playtesters were confused and not sure how to even play the game. A slingshot seemed like the easiest solution and made it obvious for players what to do. With just one chapter of the game, Poached Eggs, and the first 5 playable birds, Rovio released the game on app stores and became millionaires overnight. Wait, they didn't become millionaires overnight? Nope. Unlike Cut the Rope, for example, this game didn't catch a lot of attention. It wasn't free, so there needed to be something to entice players to spend money, and apparently people weren't interested. It was a slow release, but thankfully, after 3 months, Apple gave the game a spot on the front page of the App Store, and just like that, they reached 1 million downloads. Oh, so then they became millionaires. I get it now. What do you mean they still aren't rich? God dang it, what's taking so long? Well, truthfully, it was a pretty short wait, as the game reached 2 billion downloads just a few years later. I really liked the story of the first game, as it wasn't a smashing success from day one. If Apple hadn't promoted the game, who knows if it would have gained popularity. The series now has an enormous list of games, a bunch of TV shows, 2 films, merchandise like you wouldn't believe, theme parks, green McDonald's burgers, Angry Birds Dog! It's safe to say Angry Birds has invaded every aspect of life in one way or another. That includes being referenced in media constantly. It's hard to find a Family Guy episode that is not included.
Go, 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 go. Ah, he so should have died. This is bullcrap.
Mad Comics made multiple presidents in Angry Birds, and sure, you're all familiar with Obama Bird, but have you seen Angry Bernie Sanders before? Yeah, I didn't think so. Garfield became a bird, the official NHL mascot was an Angry Bird for a while, they had a Nashville hot chicken place? Oh wait, that one is a poorly made ripoff. Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario, said he wishes he made Angry Birds. He said that! We could be here all day putting out cool real life connections Angry Birds has had, but we're here to slap this thing on a tier list, so let's actually play the game now. For this section, I want to go through every chapter of the game as it released, and discuss what each one brought to the table. As previously stated, Poached Eggs was the only set of levels when it first released, which is pretty crazy to think about. It didn't even have a title at first, it just was the game at launch. I need to read you the line they put in the description of the first version of the game, it's so freaking funny to me. It's a quote from a so-called expert named Colonel Angus. If you're wondering who Colonel Angus is, I got nothing for you. But here's a cool image I'd like to imagine he looks like. Look at him as I read you the description. Let me tell you, these ain't no ordinary finches we're talking about. These here are the angry birds, the ones that's gonna kick you in the nads. And they're the ones on your side. They must be from Galapagos or something. Spoken like a true bird expert right there. I think it's safe to say, at this point, I'm pretty much a bird expert. And they're obviously from Bird Island, thank you. As this is the first chapter, it added pretty much everything. So let's start with the gameplay. I know it's crazy to explain the gameplay of Angry Birds to all the Angry Birds fans out there, so I'll make it quick. In each level, you're given a specific group of birds and must launch them at the structure to kill all the pigs in order to beat it. Every level in the game follows this formula, but what changes are the environment and the structures, the pigs, and of course the birds you get to use. Each bird is given a unique ability, and we'll go through them as they're introduced. Red is the most straightforward with no power. He's a ball that can be used to hit items and pigs, and that's about it. He isn't particularly strong against any material. The blues, also known as Jay, Jake, and Jim, mix things up, starting as one bird and splitting into three. They're great at destroying glass, but will struggle with wood and stone. Next is Chuck, the yellow bird, who speeds up when used and effectively breaks wood. Then we have the white bird, who is now known as Matilda and has a white and pink, more feminine color scheme, but originally was much more neutral with yellow cheeks instead. We can assume she was always meant to be female, however, considering she lays explosive eggs as her power. The eggs explode whenever they hit and send Matilda flying up at an angle. The last bird introduced in this chapter was Bomb, the black bird, who explodes every material but is especially good against stone. Understanding how each bird works is key to beating each level. There's an assortment of pigs to pop as well. Medium pigs are the most basic, with 3 different sizes of small, medium, and large pigs. Then the Corporal Pig is the next strongest thanks to his trusty helmet. He's also the first boss of the chapter, but returns as a normal enemy afterwards. The next boss is Foreman Pig, with his cute little mustache. And finally, the one, the only, King Pig, who appears exclusively in the final level of the chapter. He is the strongest and largest pig, with a fashionable crown to boot. These enemies are the only enemies for the majority of the levels in the entirety of the game. After beating a level, you're given a score based on the amount of pigs and materials you destroyed. Additionally, you are given 10,000 points for every bird you have left in the level. You can earn up to 3 stars based on your score in every level. Much later in the life of the game, you needed a certain amount of stars to unlock levels, and a bonus level is added for getting 3 stars in every level of a chapter, but I'm pretty certain those are not added for quite a while. Last thing to mention is the story. Still unsure of how much of this was in the first version, but here's how I've been introduced to it since. The flock notices that the eggs are gone, and Chuck has noticed a trail of pig hoofs. Wait a second, that's not Chuck! What have you done to him? Sorry everyone I just traumatized. The game has had some crazy changes. Anyways, I can't talk about the first chapter anymore, we need to move on now! The second update released in February of 2010 and added the Mighty Hoax and nearly doubled the length of the game. The story this time is that the pigs stole your eggs again, and wow, Chuck was the only one to notice. You've got a keen eye there, Chuck. They use these cardboard standees to hide behind, but otherwise it's the same as before. All of the birds are the same, but we start to see new locations and of course new levels. The addition of the triangle block made for a ton of new structures. Oh my god, that's it, thank god. Trust me when I say these will go much quicker and be a lot more entertaining than that first chapter probably was. Around Easter was the third update that added the golden egg feature, meaning past and future levels would have a few hidden eggs to find with brand new levels. These levels didn't have a 3-star marker, and instead you simply had to beat it to earn their single star. These levels are much more experimental, and some of them aren't even levels. There's a sound tester and a radio too. Next was our big boy, the coolest update yet, with chapter Danger Above, and a brand new bird. I never thought this day would come. The green bird, Hal. Hal is my favorite bird of all time, and he has a boomerang ability. He launches much farther than the other birds so he can fly past structures and come back to break them from behind. I wish Sasha Lynx would come at me from behind. What a great bird. He's so cool, right guys, right? Danger Above took place high in the trees after the pigs took the eggs like Carl from Up took his house. Wow, Chuck was the only one to see this happen again. You'd think the others would start to catch on by now. Other than being high up in the trees and having some pigs held up by balloons, the newest feature was the bouncy mattress, which is pretty self-explanatory. Still, a cool addition. From this point on, levels were added in groups of 15s. There were 3 updates in total before moving on to the next chapter. I won't be pointing that out each time, so just remember that, would you? Would you believe this is when it was released on Android? Took them long enough. Anyways, ready to meet the biggest bird? Well, when the rest of the flock has been captured, there's only one left to take their revenge, Terrence. Since he doesn't have a power, but he's super massive, they followed the color scheme of red and made him, well, red. Terrence is the strongest bird and can beat almost all these levels on his own, so they decide to give him his own dang chapter. And since Hal is pretty underused still, he joins the fight a little while in. Terrence and Hal are my favorite of the original flock, so this chapter has always held a special place in my heart. The big setup may get stale towards the end, just because you only get 2 birds, but I don't even care, I love it. At the 1-year anniversary, not only was the chapter Ham 'em High added, yeehaw, but a brand new bird, the Mighty Eagle. It's crazy to think this monstrosity of a power-up debuted a full year after launch, but boy was it worth the wait. Now every level had an Eagle high score meter that gave you a feather for reaching 100% every level. However, you had to pay real money to own the Mighty Eagle, but in return you could use him to skip a tough level if needed. The way this power-up works is you can launch a can of sardines at the pigs, and the Mighty Eagle is so dang horny for sardines that he launches at the speed of light towards that can. Getting the perfect angle will help you reach a 100% score. In this chapter, pigs lasso up some eggs and... Seriously guys, just turn around once, the pigs are right there! You know, I liked you better when you had 2 nubs on your head, Chuck. Hamamai has always been my least favorite chapter, just because I hate desert and Wild West stuff. There are a lot of very frustrating levels here too, most of which just generally aren't fun in my opinion. Then in June of 2011, the Mine and Dine chapter was added, featuring some dark and spooky caves filled with valuable jewels. Can you guess who noticed the pigs? Thankfully, Jake at least saw a hole this time. No way Jim noticed that shit. And to celebrate their 2nd anniversary, the Birdday Party began. This chapter got small updates every year to celebrate the anniversary, so they gave it 2 sections levels for the first 2 years. And you know who made their debut? Inflation lovers everywhere are going insane right now. Yep, Bubbles appeared for the first time in this level pack, after getting some attention in Seasons. His ability is to inflate real big, then let the air out and hit a few more pigs before disappearing. He fits the theme of the party pretty well, honestly. But you just had to make him confused like everyone but Chuck, didn't you? You know what, I'm done mentioning the cutscenes, you pissed me off for the last time. Then we hit the beach and the surf and turf levels, where there really isn't anything too crazy to talk about. These levels are actually from an early Angry Birds Friends tournament, which I had never heard of before researching. They also added power-ups in this update, so let's quickly go through them. The Power Potion gives inflation fans just a taste of what they're looking for. The King Sling makes your slingshot crazy powerful. The Sling Scope adds your trajectory for better aiming, and the Birdquake makes the ground do a little Harlem Shake. At the same time that Bad Piggies was released, Rovio added a tie-in level pack to the original game. It's a really cool idea, I think, and kind of helps cross over the new vehicles using that game into the main series. It's almost like we're seeing both sides of the story or something. I know I said I wouldn't do this, but speaking of the story, the birds are oblivious to a car coming and grabbing their eggs. But somehow Chuck is playing 5D chess over here and starting a hashtag. Finish the hashtag! You can't make a hashtag without words, dumbass! Then the 3rd anniversary rolled around and brought Stella in, just like they did for Bubbles. Coincidentally, Stella blows Bubbles. Huh? Wait, hold on, I didn't mean that! She lifts enemies up with the bubbles that she made from our bubble wand. That again feels pretty fitting for the birthday theme. The next 2 updates gave our characters some cool upgrades, and the first one is Red's Mighty Feathers. For the first time ever, Red has a power! It basically works the same as Laserbird from Angry Birds Space, where Red will change directions to wherever you tap. I absolutely love this set of levels. It continues that Bad Piggies theme with an amazing environment and basically a brand new bird. Guys, there's actually a freaking story this time! Get out of here, Chuck! Make way for a full-blown comic strip! One day when the Mighty Eagle is flying by, his feathers fall near Red and give him a new power. After beating our first unique boss of this entire game so far, Red manages to save one of the eggs. But the pigs are still on the attack, and now it's your turn to defend. I cannot believe this is happening right now. How is this not its own game? Somehow Angry Birds added a full-on tower defense mode, and it is absolutely incredible. Foreman Pig is actually being a foreman for once and whipping up machine after machine to grab the egg. You have as many reds as you need to take down each pig in the level. Getting 3 stars now means saving the egg, killing every pig, and using as few reds as possible. If you miss a pig, you also can't get that 3rd star. Playing these levels was the most fun I've had so far recording this video. I would have loved to see a full game like this with more characters than just Red. Maybe everyone gets a new ability from Mighty Eagle. Could have been really cool, I think. It would be hard to top that, but I'd say they got pretty darn close to Short Fuse. Instead of Red receiving a new power, this time around it's Bomb. With his Shockwave ability, Bomb now electrocutes all pigs and objects near him and pushes them away in the process. Just that black and cyan color scheme is cool as it is, but electric powers are absolutely insane. Not to mention the super unique set of levels they've added here. I feel like these last couple of chapters have been the best in the game so far, and it's mostly due to the really fun ideas they're introducing to the game. Some of those ideas include the brand new potions. There's 3 that have similar effects to some of our favorite birds. I might make a full video on random theories I have about Angry Birds, and one would definitely be about how the birds might have been tested on with these potions, or the powers extracted from these birds. Anyways, the first one inflates the pigs just like Bubbles. Man, the inflation-loving homies are eating good tonight! Then the blue one splits pigs into 3 like the blues, and finally the pink one is based on Stella's Bubbles. But like, that's just more inflation, quite frankly. These potions just add a fun spin to the typical level, and I kinda wish they appeared outside of this chapter. The story is much less exciting than Red's was, but at least Chuck still ain't here. The pigs take the eggs into the underground lab, while Bomb frolics in some purple goo. Besides frolicking in any kind of goo being my favorite pastime, this is what causes Bomb's new ability. The Shockwave also becomes a power-up, which totally makes sense, and it's definitely my go-to power-up of choice. Sadly, after this chapter, I'd say things really started to become stale for the original game. These were some crazy fun updates, but afterwards it really just made the game more bland than ever before. Because of this, I'm going to try to speed up these last few chapters, as it's really been going on longer than I anticipated. We got the 4th anniversary birthday levels as always, and then the Flock Favorites chapter. It was a nice idea to make more levels and the best themes, but it's also kind of just a way to make new levels without having to make new assets. Still cool, I think. That was the only addition that year, as the next birthday rolled around. It was originally its own chapter, but eventually got merged with the other birthdays. But this one was special because they used player-created level designs. Some are definitely better than others, but don't forget that these levels introduced us to the rhinoceros. These guys really serve no purpose, but I just enjoy the way it looked. 2015 had no new chapters and simply received another batch of birthday levels, again. And as we all know, 2016 was the year of the Angry Birds movie, which meant every game's logo and loading screen had to have that new art style incorporated into it. I've always felt that app icon was cursed. It's just simply unnatural. Would have been fun for like a month, but they really stuck to it for a long time. They added the Mighty League to the game soon after, as if the weekly levels of Angry Birds Friends wasn't enough. Nope, now you need to waste your time getting high scores and levels you've already played to level up and earn coins. It's complete BS, and as I said before, the game really took a nosedive after the Shockwave chapter. The mini screen during this time is absolutely ridiculous too. Want to play? Well, here you go. You obviously want to play the Mighty League, don't you? Oh, you want to play the hundreds of handcrafted levels we made? Pfft, you're lost, buddy. You can click on that tiny little button in the corner then. Just baffling. We hope you aren't sick of the Angry Birds movie quite yet, because the Angry Birds are going back to Bird Island. What's weird is these levels have almost nothing to do with the movie, and they're actually some of the most bland and unfun levels in the entire game. The last level is the only interesting one, as it uses the boat from the movie and introduces the only other new pig in the whole game, Leonard, who really is just a reskin of King Pig, and looks pretty horrible, honestly. Then we're back to Birthday for the 7th anniversary, and just like that, in 2017, we received our last 2 major updates. It's sort of crazy to think about. For one, to stop updating their biggest game ever in 2017 is sad, especially because we didn't even get our 8th birthday celebration. We also got more levels in 2017 than the last couple of years combined. I have never played these levels before, so I'm at least curious to see what they'll be like. The penultimate pack was Piggy Farm, and if you've been waiting for another cutscene, well, at least it's different? I don't know if this is just me, but this genuinely looks fan-made. How this is official, I have no clue, but it is just not good. And I'd have to say the same for the levels. They just don't have anything interesting to do. I think the game really was getting stale, so they managed to make things fresh with the Red Mighty Feathers levels. But now we're back to something I simply don't care for anymore. The end of the chapter actually reveals Mustache Pig going through a time machine, leading us to Jurassic Pork. Now I have to admit, that seemed pretty awesome, considering I always wanted a full time travel adventure with Angry Birds. But expecting to see some dinos was clearly too much to hope for, because again, it just sucks so hard. There are some dino skeletons towards the end that are kinda cool, but the first pack of levels is so dang bad. Each one is packed full of random crap, and looking at one of these levels versus the ones all the way back in Poached Eggs, I think it's clear to see just how different the game has become. Sure, I'm sad this was the last content update the game ever received, but how much do I really want to keep playing these levels? Truthfully, not very much. I think it was important to go through the game update by update just to see the ups and downs of the game, so we can take it into account for our ranking. Was it solid all the way through? Not really, no, and that's kind of a big deal. Let's start with the positives. What do I like about the original Angry Birds? Well, it's a pretty long list, but here's the simplified version. The first 10 or so chapters are filled with amazing and exciting new levels that make your effort feel worth it in the end. The little bonuses like the golden eggs or that King Pig mode I never touched on give you a reward for investing your time into the game. And of course, the music and visuals are perfect, and it's hard to imagine them looking and sounding any differently. This game is what I love about Angry Birds, and that can't be ignored. But neither can the game's last few updates. The Mighty League makes me pretty mad, and while I'm glad the game got more chapters, they're pretty hard to play through in my opinion. But is that enough to tarnish the game's reputation? Thankfully, I really don't think so. Sure, this game fails to be perfect, but there's just too much love that I cannot ignore. Playing through the entirety of this game has not changed my mind, no matter how many times Chuck made me scream today, and that means this game is our first S tier. We start the list out strong, but can it hold up? How quickly are the next titles in the series going to decline? Well, you're gonna have to stick around to find out, I guess. The last thing I want to say about the original Angry Birds is this. We start out the video discussing how Rovio was surely doomed to go bankrupt, and the silly little idea led to their lives changing for the better, forever. It was clear to see the passion and fresh ideas being put into every level in the game. That's why it was so fun to play. And now, the game that saved their company and made them rich does not exist anymore. The series does still exist, and they continue to make games that are so clearly bad and uninspired, but that success story that made the series to begin with can never officially be played again. And that is truly heartbreaking and frustrating to think about. Rovio is so lucky that they created fans of the series before they drove it into the ground, but even the most diehard fans are having trouble sticking around these days, myself included. So instead of having to think about that, please just join me in reminiscing about these wonderful games throughout the series. I can't wait to cover the next few classics down the road. Thank you for watching, and please let me know if you like the way I formatted this video. It's almost entirely a history lesson on the updates throughout the life of the game, but is that a good way to go about it? Let me know what you think. Please help to support this series by becoming a patron or becoming a member like all these wonderful people. Roth One Finger, Cobalt Chrome E, Patrick Byerjohn, Honomaki, Decan 9000, Bright Streak, MD Switchy, Gall Guy, Daisy, Poop Fart II, Dojo Master, Pez Dispenser, Omegon, Carl Williams, and Christoph Creations. Join my Discord so we can discuss these games further, and I will see you next week for a look back on the next game in the series, Angry Birds Seasons. Goodbye. Around Easter was the third update that added the golden egg feature. Sorry, I was medically diagnosed as quirky.